you curious about what it's like to really solo cruise and if it's scary, are you alone, that kind of thing? I'm here to talk about that with you, my experiences with solo cruising, because I've done several of them now, at least more than at least two digits. And there are probably more than 50% of my cruises are just solo cruising. Tell you exactly what I did, not only to mentally prepare for solo cruising, but also financially. So, the first thing I want to talk about is mentally preparing for solo cruising. Now, when I cruised before, I cruised with my family, my husband, my kids. Of course, they were a lot younger and didn't really have a choice, but they also were in school. So in the summer, I would take them and stuff, especially as they got older. So that's how my cruising experience was normally. I either went with my husband or I went with my kids. And then I met some people from work that also liked cruising, and I started to talk with them about cruising. But before I even went with them, because you know how when you meet somebody at work, you're like, I don't know if how it's going to be outside of work. Are we going to get sick of each other? And then on top of that, at a cruise, like when you're on a cruise with somebody, you got to really like that person. You cannot ignore them. You really got to like them. And I actually learned that on my very first cruise that I ever did. I actually didn't go with my husband. I went with one of my good friends who's gay. And unfortunately, it did not go very well. And our relationship as friends never really kind of recovered because I realized things about him that I had known him for like 3 years. And by being in that small space on that ship, I learned more about him in those 7 days than I had learned about him in the 3 years that I'd known him. It was just a completely different experience. And yeah, our friendship really hasn't recovered. I mean, we're still casual friends, but we're not as close as we were, unfortunately. And I was always worried that that was going to happen again. So I was really worried about when I met coworkers that were like, hey, yeah, let's go and cruise. I guess the fear of some kind of incident happening to me for my personal safety, I was worried about. You hear about people getting kidnapped in Mexico, and if I'm by myself, who's going to protect me? Who's going to be that like buffer, right? And that's when I just realized I've got to stop being afraid, because a life event happened to me, which I've kind of discussed before in my past, where I got breast cancer. And that's when I realized I was letting my whole life pass me by. I was letting fear completely control me. And I had continued to let my kids come first, my family come first, instead of me first. So that's when I decided to take care of myself and do the things that I need to do for myself, for my happiness. And that's when my world completely changed. Even though I had gone on cruises with my coworker before, I went ahead and decided to say, let's do a mock solo cruise. And what that means is I was in a room by myself and they were in a room by themselves, but we would still be on the cruise together. So technically we were solo cruising, right? Because we were in our own cabin by ourselves, but we weren't solo cruising because there was somebody else there to keep us company or go to dinner with us and whatnot. But we made the rule that this was our mock solo cruise. So if we didn't want to do the same things, it was okay. We could go off and do other things. We wanted to make sure that that was okay. And I always tried to make sure that the other person, especially after my first experience, that they were comfortable to know that they can always do what they want to do. They don't have to entertain me, and I don't want them ever to feel like they need to do that, because I'm perfectly okay sitting in my cabin reading a book and watching the waves. I have no qualms about that. But when we first did this mock cruise, we did it in 2 separate rooms. And I highly suggest that. If you want to go on a cruise, but you're afraid to go completely by yourself, book your own cabin for just you. And then go with somebody else, like a friend or family member, and then have them in their own cabin and whatnot. Hopefully they'll be okay with that. or you've enjoyed these group cruises where you can meet other people. And a lot of times these influencers, they have these group cruises, or these other, your organizations or clubs will have these little cruises, and you can meet up with them at dinner, and or you can go on a shore excursion with these people that you meet. But either way, at least you have some level of security in yourself emotionally, that you're not completely alone, but you're alone. Because when you go to bed at night, you're the only one in that cabin. And I know that helped me get the courage to be like, I could do this. I could do this. So after my first mock cruise, it went very successful, by the way. What I did is I went like a couple weeks later on my own with nobody. I didn't know anybody on this cruise. It was a very short cruise, a 4-day cruise. It was one of these getaway cruises. It was 4 days. And on that cruise, I probably stayed in my cabin the entire time and only went out during the casino events because it was a casino cruise. So they had these little events every night. I only went out during the casino events, and then I had an interior cabin. So I brought my Switch and I put it, since it gets really, really dark in the interior rooms, I put my Switch on the cabin wall with my little portable projector that I have. It's like this small, and it projected my Switch, and I was just playing video games. I was playing Animal Crossing, if you're curious, but I was just sitting there playing video games on my Switch, and and Cult of the Lamb, which had just come out at the time, because yeah, crazy. That, like, I've spent all this money to come on this cruise to do exactly what I've been doing at home. And I regretted that. And since then, I try to keep my Switch at home. And I do sometimes bring it for really, really long cruises, because sometimes the sea days just get too much and I just need like a decompress. And I decompress with video games. But now, to be financially prepared, one of the things is I am very blessed that my husband is able to support me, but I also have what they call a day job, right? Yes, I'm a travel agent and I book people's travel and I help them with that. But my day-to-day stuff is my title. I'm actually a tax preparer. I know the taxes, but yeah, that's my day job. But again, I'm able to do that because for the first half of the year, I'm not really cruising. And for that first half of the year, I am working, and I'm working so much that I'm able to afford taking the vacations during the off season. So January through April 15th, I'm working, and I've accumulated enough funds that I can go ahead and schedule my cruises for either the current year or the next year. Usually it's the next year, because I book out if I possibly can. The other thing is I do gamble on the cruise ships. I try to keep it to, honestly, $100 a day. I might go over it a little bit, and when I'm talking about $100 a day, I'm talking about the cash that I have on hand that I put in the machine, not the cash that's recycling. Because what happens is once you put the cash in the machine and it starts recycling, it looks like you've actually spent, instead of $100, like $1,000 or $2,000, because you're playing on your winnings. That's why I just put $100 in, $100 a day. And so, yeah, for a 7-day cruise, that's like $700. And that's why I said, if spending $700 just for the casino, and not to mention the rest of it, then yeah, it's very expensive. We're looking at least about $2,000 to $3,000 on every cruise is what I'm spending, because there's things like the internet that I'm still buying. Sometimes I get them free, but most of the time I don't. Sometimes I get the drink packages for free, sometimes I don't. So for most of my casino offers, it's usually no more than $400 or $500, depending on the time of year. Usually I can get it anywhere between 2 and 4 though, for a 4-day cruise. And that's usually giving me drink packages. That's what the casino offers. The only thing is if I want to get points, or if I want to get my stockholder, which is that $200 you get, or the $100 you get for, or $50, depending on your length of your cruise. If you have 100 Carnival stock, which I highly recommend get the Carnival stock, the Royal Caribbean stock, because they offer those onboard credits. The only way you can get that though is if you pay something. So I typically can go in, and if I upgrade my cabin to like a spa version or to a higher deck where I'm paying a little bit extra for my cabin versus the free cabin, then I can get that onboard credit. So that's typically what I will do. So when I go in and look at all the numbers, and I even recently when I've looked, let's just say $500 for the cabin in, for $700 there. So I'm already getting close to like almost $2,000. That's not counting, and then with the Wi-Fi, that's not counting the specialty dinings and whatnot. So there are things that, yeah, you definitely want to consider. You're probably looking at about at least $2,000 per trip. But again, I'm able to afford this because I'm working and go on these trips because I work at the front end of the year. And then I travel during the later half of the year. And sometimes I'll go into the summer. I don't travel often in the summer, mostly because it's more money. It's always more money. I will typically pay almost double what I pay versus the fall. So these are things you have to consider when you're doing solo cruising. And the reason is the single supplement. Now, little known trick, because I'm a travel agent, I actually get a list of cruises that are not getting charged a single supplement because they actually don't charge them on certain cruises. Princess does this. That's how I usually go ahead and go into the cruising, is because I have to remember I'm paying for 2 people. Now, the stinky part of it is I am paying for 2 people, and even though I'm paying for 2 people on the Carnival brands, I'm only getting credit for 1 person. I don't get double points. I get single points. Royal does something a little bit different. Once you get a little bit more status with them, they start offering discounts for that. They also have specific singular solo cabins. So does Norwegian. So each cruise line has something that they do for solo cruises. It's not always prevalent. It's not always there. People who specialize it like me tend to look at it more and know more about it than your average cruiser. But if you're like me and you just want to experience the freedom of not having to cruise with somebody or not having to do that, then definitely give me a call and I can help you with that. All right. If you liked any of my tips or have any more questions, please leave a comment below. Make sure you like and subscribe, not describe, but like and subscribe to the channel to get more tips and tricks.